All right. Hello, everybody. Hope you all are doing well. This is DFS Army's pre-lock show where you have me, no B-dubs this week, but we are going to go game by game, talk through some of the changes that I make in the DS, answer some questions along the way, and we'll be good to go. Nice 4-game slate, which is nice after yesterday. Yesterday's slate kicked my ass, I'm not going to lie. It had me questioning everything. I was like, too much Rozier, Bobby Portis sucked. So many people sucked. And it's one of those slates where chalk failed. And you kind of have to figure out what kind of DFS player you're going to be. It's like, are you going to eat the chalk and use leverage plays as a way to get different? Or are you never going to play the chalk? Sometimes you can do a bit of a mixture. For me, I like to typically eat the chalk unless I really don't like the plays, and then I'll cap them. And then I'll focus on my leverage plays as a way to get different. So that's just a philosophy thing. But let's look at this slate and get going. Like I said, nice 4-gamer. First, we have the Raptors going up against the 76ers. For the Raptors tonight, when it comes to injury news, it doesn't really get super interesting. RJ Barrett is out, but that doesn't move the needle too much. He's someone who's been in and out all year. Jakob Poeltl's out. He's been out for a few games. That's why we're seeing guys like Mogbo and Boucher and Robinson show up. For me, sim model plays like Quickly, like Mogbo, like Abaji, so I have a like on them. Grady Dick is someone that's projecting well. He's seeing decent ownership. He got hurt last game, so you have to ignore that. He's a fine play. I don't feel overly passionate about him one way or the other. He naturally shows up in the vast majority of my lines, though. There is a bit of injury news that we're waiting for in some of the later games that could make a play like Dick not as viable. But at this point, 4,300, seeing 23 minutes, I'm just going to trust the DS on this one, and I'm fine being significantly over the field on him. What's up, Rodney? Phil, let's get that 100K. Let's make it happen, man. Cujo, what's up, gang? Yeah, Bobby Portis was a bum. It hurt a lot. Yeah, yesterday is one of those, just gotta pretend like that shit didn't happen. Thomas Dye, what's up, man? OG said, sup, Jay? My Eagles took that shit down. Yeah, they did. And the whole world was happy to see it. No one wanted to see the Chicago or the Chiefs win because they're tired of it. Now, no one wants to see the Eagles win again, but I'm happy y'all got a shit. So congrats to y'all. JM, good to see you. Cedric, Harlock said, try to avoid Dick. Yeah, I don't love him, to be honest, but he's showing up a lot. I don't think I'm going to tinker with it, but we'll see. Dave, what's up, y'all? All right, so yeah, we talked about the Raptors. Quickly does make me a bit nervous, but with RJ Barrett out and Jakob Poeltl, he sees a nice increase in usage, so I feel a bit better about having exposure to him. He's showing up in a lot of my lines, and I feel comfortable with it. Quickly is one of those guys that can disappoint us, but I always feel more comfortable when there's not other high usage players around him. That's when we can see him thrive and have a bit more ceiling. We've seen it on the Raptors before, and we've seen it on the Knicks before that. Scotty Barnes is someone I wanted to force exposure to, so I have a 15% min on him. Matchup isn't great. He's just a stud who I like the spot for him. If you're talking about, when I say matchup, I'm usually talking about game environments and pace and things of that sort. For this slate is not my favorite spot. In regards to like literal matchup, like player versus position from like a fantasy point perspective, that's part of why I am a little bit more open to playing a guy like Scotty. The 76ers are giving up the 8th most fantasy points to versatile forwards, so it is a bit of a softer spot and matchup for Scotty than he's seen in a while. Like he's been going up against teams like Houston, OKC, the Knicks, the Clippers. He's had some tough spots. He disappointed in late January against Chicago and Washington, but he had some 56, 57, 60-point upside earlier this year. So hopefully he can get back into form here in a softer matchup for him. So 15% min there. He's someone that I'm considering making a leverage play, but not all the way sold yet. So a little nervous about it. Abaji, he's just been really good. He's 4K, good, seeing plenty of minutes. He's a low usage player, so that's why you don't get overly excited about a guy like Abaji. But in this spot, with the sim model liking him too, I'm comfortable with it. Next up, we have the 76ers going up against Toronto. Toronto is a team that we typically like to see on slates, but this season they've been pretty neutral from a matchup perspective. So they're pretty league average in every single position. Pace, not really anything to get excited about. Just in general, I don't love it. The one player I'm open to playing is Joel Embiid. He is questionable per usual, so we have to wait and see if he's actually going to play. But for now, assuming he does play in this matchup, I am comfortable having some exposure to him. So I have a 15% min on Joel Embiid. If he plays, I'm going to keep that there. If he doesn't play, that's when things get a bit more interesting. You can talk me into taking some shots on Maxey. Yabusele still feels a little pricey for me at 6K, but without Embiid, he's just priced appropriately. So he doesn't feel like a must play, but he becomes a more viable DFS play. And then even a guy like Paul George, who has shown not a lot of signs of life so far this season, besides that few decent game run he had in January. Outside of that, we haven't really seen shit from him. So again, I'm not really looking at the Sixers tonight too much outside of Joel Embiid, and that's if he plays tonight. Let's see. Are any other Sixers showing up? Yeah, no, it's just him. Quentin Grimes, I have a like on. Sim Model liked him a good bit. He's just a player seeing 33 minutes. There's not a need for the vast majority of my lines to need that kind of value from him. There's just some other spots on the slate, but he's still viable. If he shows up, I'm not going to X him out or anything like that. Okay, let's see. What are y'all saying? One prize said, I asked in chat, I think you were going to answer, is it pointless to play 5 to 10 lineups in a $5 5K GPP with 5,500 people? No. With, for me, I am very comfortable taking shots with like 5 to 10 lineups when you're not in a large field GPP. Typically, in a large field GPP with like 20K plus lines, you should probably play at least 100 to 150 lines. I mentioned in the chat, I have won 100K with only 20 lines before, but that was me really just going overboard on Joel Embiid coming back from being injured. So it's one of those spots where you do really need to go overboard in regards to exposure and take some strong stances when you don't have as many lines at your disposal as some of the other players. You have to take some stronger stances in those lines is what I would recommend. But yeah, 5 to 10 is fine. I can't with you, man. What is the max you can play? You mean the max players, Father of Three, in a line? So far, I'm not thinking of making any rules there. I like the Raptors in the vast in a lot of my lines. So far, it looks like they're only showing up in around 3 in most of these lines, and that would be my answer. Is I wouldn't really want more than 3, and it looks like I'm seeing 2 to 3 in the vast majority of these. Not seeing too many cases of 4, which is ideal. In general, that's usually ideal for me. Father of Three said, like Big Shot when he took down the 150K, I only had 5 lineups. What? Let's go, Father of Three. Yeah, I mean, that's why I say I do think it's easier when you have 150 lines because you can maximize different exposures to players. You can get more leverage, but you can win without maxing these contests. There's great examples. Both DFS Army members, we've done it. Phil said, enter 3 lineups in a 20 max and hit before. Yeah, exactly. That's another great example. Like, you don't have to always max out. Sweet. All right, y'all. Yeah, Grimes, Richard, the sim model likes Grimes. I personally don't feel one way or the other about him showing up in my lines. There's other plays I like more that I would force a min on. So I just didn't prioritize him, but he's viable. For me, if the sim model likes someone, I'm never going to say no to them. I've been proven wrong too many times with that to fall for that trick again. Okay. Next up, we have probably the best just in general game on the slate. Knicks going up against the Pacers. For the Knicks, when it comes to injury news, we have OG Anunoby listed as doubtful. That's big. That's big on a weird 4-game slate like this. OG plays a crap ton of minutes, 36 minutes typically. All these Knicks players play a lot of minutes, the starters. And so when one goes down, that impacts this team a lot because they're not splitting minutes as evenly as some of the other teams are. We would expect a guy like Precious Achua to start in a spot like this. Again, you have to keep a close eye out on the news because who knows what happened in practice yesterday. But whoever starts for OG becomes someone I want to see in more of my lines. Depending on where ownership falls, will depend on if that guy ends up being a core player or not, and also how the DS reacts to that news. But if OG is out, I want Precious in my lines, no questions asked. And then alongside that, with him being doubtful, I automatically like a guy like Mikal Bridges more. All these guys see a boost in usage with OG out, and it's even more amplified when you're a team like the Knicks, and these guys are all going to see a ton of minutes. So Bridges is going to be the lowest owned Knicks starter, which is another reason I like him. And then alongside that, when it comes to just matchups 1-for-1, the Pacers have been a pretty good defense this year, especially against wings, like 3-and-D wings, like Hart and OG and Anunoby, which means this is a bit of a tougher matchup for Precious Achua. So that's why there's a little bit of risk where I want to be over the field, but I'm not going to say he's going to be a core play quite yet. Whereas Bridges actually has the softest matchup, probably seeing a good amount of Nimbart tonight. The Pacers are giving up the 7th most fantasy points to forwards, versatile forwards like Bridges. We know he's very scoring dependent, and so that's why he's not a leverage player or anything like that. I just have a min on him of 11%. And then Karl Anthony Towns, Jalen Brunson, for their price, these are two of the best plays on the slate for me. I have a 30% min on both. Sim model like both of these plays. Josh Hart was standing out in the sim model. Again, these guys play a ton of minutes, and in a game that should be close, that's a spot you want to attack. So I have a like on Josh Hart. He's showing up in plenty of my lines. And then if OG plays, sim model liked him at 6,200, so I'm not ruling him out either. Then when we look at guys I have actual exposures to, we see Jalen Brunson showing up as a core play, Josh Hart right around field weight, Cat, that 30% min is putting in work, and then Mikal Bridges, that's the 11% min that I'll boost to 12. And then Cameron Payne is showing up in 2% of my lines. Don't love that. If OG's out, I'll allow it, but if he's still showing up in lines post-lock, I'll X him out. That's a player I just don't want to see. All right. Wait, let's see. What's going on? Whew. Okay, this is becoming a bit of a trend. I don't know if this is the message I want to stand on, but it seems like we have something going on here. All right, and then Jamie said, random thought, but do you think Dennis Schroeder regrets turning down that $84 million from the Lakers a while ago? Hell yeah, he does, Jamie. He probably wakes up every morning. He's just like, damn, that $84 million would be mighty nice right now, because no one wants him now, and no one will. Besides the Euro League, he was good over there. Damn, poor Schroeder. I don't feel bad for him really at all. That's a nice problem to have, turning down $82 million to barely play. Beautiful. All right, for the Pacers, when it comes to injury news, Miles Turner is questionable. That's big because if he sits, we have a 5K Thomas Bryant who will see plenty of minutes. And again, tough matchup. This is another spot I could probably commit to Thomas Bryant being a core play if Turner ends up getting ruled out. So this is a spot I would like, even in a tough matchup, just the price tag. If Turner plays, though, this team is not one that I love. You guys know I hate seeing Halliburton on a slate. B-Dubs had the Siakam call right last time we did a show. It feels like chasing for me here in this spot. Let me look a little bit closer at it. The Knicks are an elite defense. That is something that we all know. Pacers. Yeah, Siakam had that great game against the Clippers. He's done well against Detroit, the Spurs. Siakam's another one of those weird players, the Suns, who tends to do well in these not great matchups. And then, because it's actually a neutral matchup, it's head-to-head. Like, Siakam's ranked, or reverse that. The Knicks are ranked 16th in fantasy points to versatile forwards. like Siakam, but so it's pretty neutral. He's 7,700. Long story short, I don't love Siakam today or any of the Pacers. I rarely ever do. And pretty much none of them are showing up for me. Nesmith is showing up in about 7% of my lines. Siakam's showing up in 1% of my lines. He's going to be 24% owned. It's really just the take I have on this slate is I'm not forcing exposure to the Pacers. I'm eating a lot of chalk. There's a lot of players I like on this slate. The Pacers aren't one. Siakam's the only real viable player I'm looking at, and then Halliburton's a dart throw at 11% ownership. I don't love it. 3% ownership, I'll be all over Halliburton today. But 11 on a 4-gamer feels high, just given his volatility and not a great matchup. So hopefully they don't kill us because we're playing some of these other guys. Oh no, that's not the takeaway one pride. I still max out if that helps. Is there any 5K or below players that we need to chase tonight, or what is the best cheap play? I'll make sure to get back to that. Josh, there are some that I like. With OG out, that weakens the Knicks defense. That's a good point. That's a really good call out. OG is a defensive force, and Precious is more of like your just big offensive player. He gets rebounds, but he's not really a great defender. Or like OG is actually good. Which, let's see. Yeah, which would make it a softer matchup for Siakam, because OG typically is on Siakam. Again, in basketball, I don't always care too much about head-to-heads because they do switch so often, but it makes the case for Siakam, for sure. And in the second highest total game on the slate, you can talk me into it. Again, very viable play from the Pacers for Siakam. I think that's the argument, is that OG's out, so it's a bit of a softer matchup. If he shows up naturally for me in the DS, again, he's only showing up in 1% of my lines, I'm okay with that. There's still other forwards and other positions I'm looking to prioritize, or players I'm looking to prioritize. All right, for Detroit, we have my favorite matchup on the slate, and most slates, the Chicago Bulls. They are bad everywhere. They play at a fast pace. The best combination you get in DFS. And for me, I want to prioritize this game. Last reason is a nice high total game, 237. We do have 2 that are higher, but again, I just like picking on the Bulls. So Cade Cunningham is the stud I want to prioritize on this slate. He's my favorite stud on the slate, so I have a 30% min on him. I have a like on Jalen Duren. That's more of a sim model play, but also great matchup, so definitely not mad at it. And then Asar Thompson. He's been in great form. He had a very strong game the other night with Cade out. What game was that? The 7th, I think, against Philly. But the funny thing is he had a good game, but it didn't really, like, he had similar fantasy production as he had in the game after it, like Charlotte, and the game before in Cleveland. So we can start to expect like that 30, 35 point upside, which is what we're looking for, 6x with a 5,100 price tag. So he's definitely viable here again, and great matchup against the Bulls. So he's a player I want to prioritize. I have a like on Asar Thompson and a 20% min. And then he's showing up in 25% of my lines. So we're just starting to see the teams I'm prioritizing. It's Cade, it's Duren, it's Thompson. I can't even get mad at a Tobias Harris play. If he was a little bit lower owned, I would probably take a shot on it, and or if he was cheaper. And he's really the only other guy I'll look at. Maybe Tim Hardaway Jr., but I didn't get to either of these guys today on this slate. If I can understand the case. Bulls are just bad everywhere. Oh, B-Dubs has us. B-Dubs, if you have leverage plays, let me know. I'm curious. I think everyone wants to know where your head's at today. But yeah, Buzelis, Tyus, Josh is B-Dubs' answer, which means it's probably would have been mine too, which we'll get to. Turner is out. Okay. Turner's out. We'll get back to it. Let's see if the DS updated this yet. No, so that must have been relatively new news. We'll come back to it. Jaws one. Okay, Jaws a leverage play. All right, I see. Okay, for the Bulls, the matchup against the Pistons is one that I'm not as excited about. Pistons have been a solid defensive team this year, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just not a situation I love. For Chicago, though, Lonzo Ball is out. Nothing else that really matters. The thing that I like is just that this team is cheap. Buzelis, Ao, Jalen Smith are three guys who stood out for me in the sim model. The thing that got my attention with Buzelis is, and I'm probably butchering his name, sorry, is I remember seeing a report a couple of weeks ago, maybe right at the trade deadline or before, that Buzelis was the only player that was untouchable for Chicago. And I was like, what the hell? Why is it him? But he's kind of been showing it. And ever since the trade deadline, we've seen his minutes be a bit more secure. He's hitting like 28, 29, 30 minutes. And that's what you want to see, especially at a 4,800 price tag with a player that has a decent usage rate. Will he go back to not existing to us soon? The risk is there. But in like a decent total game, I'm willing to take the shot on a 4,800 player that's good. So I really like him on this slate. Again, we have to keep an eye out for starting lineups and things of that sort. But assuming nothing changes here, I'm going to keep playing him. He's showing up as my highest owned player, and I'm comfortable with that. Ao is showing up in 33% of my lines. I'm going to be over the field on him. Again, I like this game. Ao always makes me nervous, but I'm not going to overthink it. And then Jalen Smith, over the field on him at 25%. Value 3,700 center. I'm going to take the like off of him because he's a explosive player. He's a high usage guy. He can do a lot with a limited amount of time. But that's not a guy I'm trying to force exposure to. If he shows up naturally, I'm more okay with that. All right. Next up, we have the Memphis Grizzlies. This game has the highest total on the slate and a nice close spread. So this is a game you want to have exposure to. And it's one that I'm forcing exposure to in a lot of ways. When we just look at exposures, Vince Williams Jr. is showing up in 27% of my lines. He's not someone I was looking at too closely originally, but it looks like we have him projected for a decent amount of minutes. He's typically a high points per minute guy. Let me look a little bit closer at him, though. I think him being the guy I have the most exposure to on this team is probably not something I want. 27%. Let's look a little bit closer at Vince. Yeah, don't love him. But we've seen stranger things. He hasn't played a lot of basketball recently. He has only played twice in like the last two games against OKC and Toronto, only seeing around 14 minutes in both. Not a player I want a lot of exposure to. He's cheap, and we don't have a ton of super obvious 3K value. So that's why he's showing up. I'm just going to cap him at 13%. I don't want to be over the field on a guy like that I don't believe in. All right, the rest of the Grizzlies, though, again, high total game. And so that's why you're seeing these guys show up as much as they are. Both of these teams should play at a pretty quick pace up spot for both sides. Matchup against Phoenix is usually one I don't target in DFS, but for a 4-game slate and with a nice total, I don't have a reason to fear in this spot. The Phoenix is pretty average against most positions. They're really good against guards, like wing players. So that's usually a spot where I try to avoid playing players against Phoenix. They're ranked third in giving up the most fantasy points to versatile bigs. So that's part of the reason why you see me boosting my exposure to Jaren Jackson Jr., 16% min on him. And then I like the call out by B-Dubs on Ja Morant. Again, this is a spot where I'm looking for reasons to play players. I'm not trying to avoid them. And I'll keep saying it, highest total game on the slate, and we're not seeing a lot of ownership from these guys. A lot of that is because they are priced appropriately, but I want to see more Ja, so I'll put a 12% min on him, 16% min on Jaren Jackson Jr., and then let's see, who else are we? I have a like on Santi Aldama. More of a sim model play. I liked him a good bit. He's only showing up in 7% of my lines. For a play like Aldama and even Edie, we have some other value from like the Raptors game. We'll touch on some of the Suns value. And we even talked about some cheapies from the Pistons that I am prioritizing a bit more. AO and Buzeli's, they fall into like this 4K range too. And so that's part of why I'm not forcing exposure to Aldama. I'm just going to put the like and let the DS put in the appropriate amount because the like is increasing his projection more than it was naturally. And so it's already doing some of that forced in work. And if the DS still doesn't like him with the like, I'm not going to force it. Same situation with Edie. These are guys that don't see a ton of minutes, and there's other value that has more secure minutes. And so I'm not going to go out of my way to prioritize them. So yeah, like the studs. The one guy I didn't get to was Bane here. I just can't play everybody. I'm going to force Ja and Jaren Jackson Jr. and call it a day. All right. And then we have the side I think I like more than most. I really like the Suns tonight in this spot. I was between Devin Booker and KD trying to figure out which one I want to make a leverage play. Still haven't landed on the answer there quite yet. But moral of the story is I look forward to playing players against Memphis. They just give up a lot of fantasy points. They're tough against guards typically, but they struggle at the shooting guard position and against wings that can score. And Devin Booker can play that role, and he plays it pretty well. Durant plays like that versatile forward spot. And both of those are spots that this Memphis team struggles against. And so it's kind of like, which one goes off? Hopefully one does, and they don't try to share it or split it. And so because I just knew I wanted exposure to both sides, I have a 13% min on Devin Booker, 18% min on Kevin Durant, and a like on Tyus Jones. The like on Tyus is really just kind of like the situation and role he's in. There's no Bradley Beal. There's no Cody Martin. Mishik isn't playing yet. So Tyus should see plenty of minutes at the guard spot at 4,800. This is very similar to what I was saying with Buzelis. The only difference is Tyus is still playing with actual stars and studs who have decent usage rates, whereas Buzelis is basically, you can call Giddey and Ayo and those guys decent NBA players, but they're not stars or anything like that. Devin Booker and KD are. So that's why Tyus is just ranked a little bit lower for me, but he's in a great spot with a lot of opportunity. And so those are the spots I like to attack. So like on Tyus, men's on Devin Booker, Kevin Durant. And then the leverage play will be the lower owned of the two. I'll do Devin Booker. I'll put a 26% min on him. And then I'll figure out who maybe 1 to 2 other leverage plays are, and I'll put them on the cheat sheet once we get there. But yep, that's going to be it from me. I'll take some time to answer some questions, talk to y'all, and then I'll update the rest of what we have going on. Jamie said FWIW. I have no idea what that stands for anymore, but I feel like I used to. Durant is 26 points away from 30K tonight. Okay. I didn't know that, but that makes me feel a little bit better about that min on KD. Maybe he should be the leverage play. 26 points isn't that much for him, though, so he should get that pretty easily. Mr. Smith said, how many uniques would you use on a like this? I don't use any uniques, just one for me all day, every day. Rodney said KD would have a tough matchup with JJJ. Yeah, with some of these, that's a good point. Like, it is a tough defensive matchup, but JJJ hasn't been shutting guys down by any means. He is known for being an elite defender, and you see something similar with Wemby too, and AD, and a ton of these defensive players of the year. The only one I can think of that I usually don't try and target is Rudy Gobert, just because he usually does do pretty well against bigs until recently. But yeah, usually these elite defenders are just good at defending a lot of players, and they're just all over the place. It usually doesn't impact their head-to-head matchup too much. And a lot of that is because of the switches and things that they do and that teams do with elite players. So I know I talk a lot about matchups, and I love attacking soft matchups, but at least on paper, this one looks like a soft matchup. But another thing is you do have to realize that KD is a different beast than a lot of scoring forwards, and Memphis is going to try and shut down him or Devin Booker. A lot of this is part of why I like taking a shot on Devin Booker at lower ownership, but I don't think the matchup is really going to depend too much on it. Joseph said, I put one lineup in a three-way split first before. Sweet. Yeah, three-way split with one lineup is a hell of a profit. That's a win. Dean said, stupid question, probably. Would you take the cheat sheet and only play those players? How do you narrow down your player pool? Dean, sorry, my bad. I don't limit player pools. I used to, but it just really didn't add too much value for me. The only thing I'll do is look at my exposures and make sure I like the players that are showing up here. We touched on one of them. Cameron Payne's a guy I absolutely can't stand tonight, unless, but with OG Anunoby, I don't know if did we get that news yet? Let me double check. With him being doubtful, it wouldn't shock me if they get a little weird with rotations, maybe try to play a little small. So that's why I'm okay with him showing up in 2% of my lines, because that gives me like a 2% chance of still winning if he does some random crap and goes off tonight. But if OG was playing, that's a guy I would just X out of my lines, because there's usually not a reason for me to play guys like that. And McBride, like he's showing up around field weight exposure. Nesmith is showing up. These are guys I can see a world where they can go off and take down a tournament. Same situation with Tim Hardaway Jr. And so there's not really a lot of value in me Xing these guys out. Even a guy like Pascal Siakam, who I'm going to be under the field on today, I am still not going to take him out of my player pool because there's still a decent chance he goes off, especially that with how chalky he is on this slate. I'm not going to X out a guy like that. It's nice to have at least one line that still has a chance to compete. So, yeah, I just really trust the DS on that. I don't really X players out. And I don't even only look at players from the cheat sheet, but I think that's a good starting point on just guys you want to see show up, is looking at the cheat sheet, looking at the leverage sheets on just ways to get different. And if you agree with what it says, you can manipulate the DS to do it, or you can follow a process that, does it for you. It's really whatever works best for you. With Turner out, who do you like more for DK? GPP, Obi, or Bryant? All right, let's look at it. Let's see what's going on here. Let me look a little bit closer at Thomas Bryant. I thought he would pop a little bit more than he is, but he's not projecting overly well. When was the last game? 6-4-1. 6-4. Okay, so Turner was out on the 8th. Let me double check that. Yeah, Turner was out on the 8th because he got hurt in that game on the 6th. And so, how did Thomas Bryant do? That makes no sense. He only played 23 minutes. He played less minutes than he typically does. And it was against the Lakers. What did they do instead? Obi Toppin saw 22 minutes. They didn't really boost him. Siakam. Yeah, in that last game, they didn't really boost anyone too crazy. I don't know. I might be missing something here. Who did they give his minutes to? Yeah, looks like I'm not seeing any crazy dramatic minute changes for anyone. They must have just really split it with some of the bench. Let's see. Obi played 22 minutes. He usually sees in the teens. So a little bit of an increase, but his minutes just move a decent amount. I mean, it kind of makes sense why projections didn't change dramatically. It looks like Obi's going to be the priority. I still don't feel fantastic about that. Yeah, I'm understanding why things are a little bit more lukewarm here. I'll rerun and see if any of these guys pop. But if I had to guess, it's probably going to be Obi just looking at his projection. That is terrifying, though. I don't want him as a core play. Okay, yeah, he's showing up in about 11% of my lines. Nesmith is showing up still a little bit more. What happened with Nesmith? Oh, maybe he's the one. Let's see. Indiana. Yeah, still not a crazy dramatic increase either. Interesting. Was it Walker? Yeah, Walker saw a decent increase in minutes, but he didn't play well. Yeah, so yeah, we boosted his minutes up a little bit. He was really the main guy who saw an increase in production with Turner out. Matchup is tough against the Knicks. I don't love taking shots on these plays when they're not seeing a dramatic increase in minutes. I was under the assumption that Bryant was going to probably see closer to 32, 33 minutes, but they're right. They haven't been using him in this way when Turner's been out. So you can still take a shot on Bryant and Obi, but they aren't really in a better spot. They're just going to have to be more efficient, and Turner won't be on the court with them. So maybe they have a few more opportunities to get rebounds and things of that sort. But for now, I'm going to trust the DS and be slightly over the field on both, like have Obi Toppin. Well, no, not really both, really just Obi showing up over the field, assuming that ownership is right, being around field weight on Nesmith. Siakam still not showing up for me much, Mathurin or Walker. Yeah, interesting spot. I'm going to keep a close eye on that, see if we change projections at all. But for now, I understand the thought process, even if I'm a little disappointed by it. For what it's worth, there we go. There we go. Do you limit total percentage ownership when optimizing? No, I really don't change anything besides tournament mode these days. And then sometimes I'll uncheck this box, prioritizing completing lineups above min and max exposures, but I'll rarely do that. So yeah. No, it's one of those situations. I'm realizing that All-Star break's coming. So I rushed home and I was like, let's get a show in. Like, there's only so much time. We can make it happen. One Pride said, don't forget. Yep. We just did it. Appreciate that. Perfect timing. Grayson said, this is a process question. Is the first thing you do is run the domination station with no changes? Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I do. I'll do tournament mode, 150, and then I'll do the 99% exposure maximum to get things to run. And then I'll just see who's popping, who's chalky. And I'll do that before I even put likes on guys, just to kind of see what's happening. And then if I'm doing a show, I'll then go to the sim model. Boom, boom, boom. And look at who's popping. And so I'll look at this 6.5 point value consistency for some of the chalkier studs. Like, this is why I like Joel Embiid. This is why I really like Cat. Jalen Brunson, favorite guard on the slate, popping in the sim model. Like, these are things that help me get on players and why I like certain guys. And I just kind of blindly follow it and click like. And then from there, I'll do more research, looking into the games, looking at the players. And that will kind of give me, hey, do I agree with this sim model play or do I not like it as much? And you all see, like, I'll still leave some of those likes on, but I'm not doing anything to force more exposure. Like for the Knicks, I like Cat, I like Brunson. I have a like on them. They still weren't showing up enough for me in the DS. And so that's why I put a 30% min on both of them to solidify and stand on those players that I actually really like, just to get them to show up a bit more. Yeah, no worries, man. Jesse said, sorry I'm late. I missed all the leverage plays. I only gave one because I still need to figure out who the other two are going to be. The only one I have right now is Devin Booker. And B-Dubs' was Ja Morant, who I like on this slate too. I'm going to try and think of at least one, maybe two more, just to add some more to the cheat sheets. And I'll make those changes too in my lines, but those will be on the cheat sheets after the show by 6:30. So that's going to be everything for me, y'all. If you're interested in having access to the domination station or the cheat sheets, feel free to click the link in the description. Promo code BOB for a 10% discount. We also have awesome coaches in the Discord answering questions back to back to back. So definitely do utilize that too. And I'll see you all not tomorrow, but Thursday, ideally. I'm traveling like an hour and a half out and I have to come back home. But the slate starts late. So It probably won't be a 5:30 start time, probably like 6:30-ish if I had to guess, but we'll see. Peace out, y'all. Good luck tonight.